Okay. I hope you're able to see the slide I'm sharing. So welcome everyone. Nice to have all of you on the call. I'm very excited for today's event because we have special guest speakers that will be speaking to our students today on their journey and how our students can actually take advantage of the information that we'll be sharing with them today. So very excited to have very experienced speakers in our midst that will be sharing that information with us. I think we're about time now, and any moment from now, we're going to really get started. Yeah, hi, Hamida. Nice to have you on the call.
Hi.
Okay. Okay, I think we can actually get started. But let's give just 2 minutes to our students because we are very tight on schedule. We would like to finish this in 90 minutes like we proposed. So I'm happy that our speakers have already come on stage. So I don't think we should waste any more time to begin the event. Right. So so first of all, I would like to welcome all of you to 2023 SMA BT Career Event. Very excited to be here and to be speaking with all of you today. I will be the host of the event. My name is Anamok Abdul Wahab, and then in our midst we have 5 guest speakers that will be speaking to our students today to share in their experience, as well as some of the skills that the students should have moving from secondary school to university and then to the real world. So I'm very excited to hear what our speakers have in store for us today. Just to begin to kickstart things, this, like I mentioned in the beginning, this event was a collaboration between SMA Special Maths Academy and Better Trajectories. And as a starting point, we would like our partner from Better Trajectories to give us a little bit of introduction about what BT is, what's their mandate, what they do, and all of that. So we're very excited to have Hamida in our midst to share that information with us.
Sure. Thank you for having me. My name is Hamida. Around like this time last year, I kind of attended a summer program called Spark in the US, which is primarily for and I kind of like looked around and there was very low geographical diversity. I ended up applying for Emergent Ventures for a grant to basically try out what it looks like to do talent search in Nigeria for a few months. And we started with like a micro grants program, which some of the participants at Special Maths Academy have received, primarily to like fund their application costs to like go to the US and the UK. And then kind of a second branch was helping out the math program called Spark in the US with their outreach. That was also pretty successful because someone from Special Maths Academy will be attending this summer, which is really great. And then kind of like the next phase looks like for more in-person programming that some of y'all might be like eligible for, including like a Spark-like program, potentially in Nigeria, but somewhere in Africa. And then also just like programming to better help us kind of understand what type of interventions would be valuable to have in the content. But yeah, that's basically what I've been working on for like the past year or so.
Oh, all right. Great. But one thing I will, as a follow-up, what are some of the opportunities currently that are available to our students through BT program?
Sure. So the main thing that's like open as of right now is kind of applying for like a micro grant. So they vary in amount, but ultimately, if you had like a project or like funding is like a constraint to applying for something, that's an opportunity. And then generally for like some of the programs that I mentioned in the future, if you went on like bettertrajectories.org, there should be like a mailing list so that you're kind of like kept in the loop for like future programming. And then another thing that I do is like if one of the opportunities that I listed is like on the Better Trajectory site and I have like a connection to that organization, very like happy to like set up connections or like kind of like networking opportunities with those groups, especially if you feel like your background might not necessarily match what they're looking for per se. It might be valuable to like have someone introduce you. So yeah.
All right, great. So at the end of this program, we will be sharing the website information of BT, as well as some of the opportunities that are available currently for our students to take advantage of through BT endeavor. So please stay tuned for that. Of course, you can always send us email if you want to find out more information about this. We are more than happy to help you. Right. So what I would like to do next, basically just shift gears to a little bit, give more information about SMA, Special Maths Academy, for our online audience on YouTube, as well as on Zoom, who are just joining, who are just hearing about SMA for the first time, just to give you a color of what we do and why we are doing what we do, right? So let me just share my screen to share that with you. First of all, I would like to say that, we started this company in 2019, and the aim of the company was to give some sort of competitive edge to African mathematicians, young mathematicians that are competing for the International Mathematics Olympiad, as well as the Pan-African Mathematics Olympiad. And since we've started, we've had a number of successes, and this is the team behind all of the successes that we've had in the last 3 to 4 years that we've been operating. The members of the Special Maths Academy are actually some of the most decorated mathematicians that have represented Nigeria at International Maths Olympiad and Pan-African Maths Olympiad. So you can guess having gold, silver, and bronze medals from those competitions. Now, at this point, I would like to highlight some of the key achievements that we've had since we've been operating. Let me just share the most recent ones. And if you've seen this boy in the news, yes, he's our star boy, Jacob Mwakinfom. He's one of the most decorated Olympians from Nigeria. In the last, last year, he was recognized internationally for getting around 20 medals across all competitions. And he's been he's one of the students that started with us from the time he was in JSS2, and we trained him for 3 years. Now he was able to get gold medal at the Pan-African Maths Olympiad last year, which was a great feat for an SS1 student. Now we have other achievements. So, for example, this particular year, the National Olympiads, where the students kind of follow through the stages, the processes, and then at the end, they get selected to represent the country. In the first round, we were able to get about 16 students to qualify from the first round to the second round. And just 2 days ago, the result of the second round came out, and 7 of our students from the total of 20 students that qualified for the third round are our students. And you can see the first position in junior is our student. The second position, tied by these 2 students, also our students. So these are some of the things that we do at the academy to help train these students to do well at these competitions. But this is not the only thing. Something else that we also do is to try to connect these students to opportunities outside of the country, outside the 4 walls of the country of Nigeria, right? And this is why it was very important for us to partner with BT, since we share the same mindset, we share the same goals. So it was a no-brainer to partner with them. And this at the heart of what you do is also, preparing the students, like I said, for the life outside secondary school, where they can translate the skills they've gotten from our training, the problem-solving skills, and then use that to solve a problem in the real world, right? And this is why we're having this event, not just to train them in mathematics, but also to give them insight on how to think about their career going forward. Finally, if you all have been following our journey, you know that we have we have a logo that we currently use. Now we are shifting to a new logo, which really represents what we're trying to build, right? So we are trying to build an edtech for the African space, right? And this is why I would like to unveil the new logo for our brand in this meeting. So that's basically what I wanted to share with you about Special Maths Academy, right? Now, I think it is well within time now to invite our first speaker of the event, which is Mr. Rashid. Basically, I would like to introduce Mr. Rashid to our audience. If you don't know him, let me just give you a key highlight of who he is and some of his achievements. Mr. Rashid is actually the current head of Emergent Ventures Africa. He is the co-founder and chief operating officer of Mackerel Hedge, a Canadian financial technology and proprietary trading firm focused on high-frequency trading strategies in cryptocurrency markets. He has previously worked in the finance industry in Southeast Asia and the Caribbean. And he's currently a visiting research fellow at Future Forum and also a director of the Caribbean ASEAN Council and a George Mason University Emergent Ventures Fellow. Please, I would like to now invite to the stage Mr. Rashid to give us some insight into what our students can do with going into their future.
Thank you for that introduction. And I'm happy to be speaking with you today. I actually just came back from a very long trip through Africa. Didn't make it to Nigeria, but I think maybe in a couple months, I'll head back to Nigeria for a couple weeks or so. So kind of looking forward to that. So much there, definitely missing out. In terms of the Emergent Ventures program, I'll give like a very short introduction to it first. So the Emergent Ventures program is a brainchild of an economist called Tyler Cohen, who's also the director of the Mercator Center at George Mason University in Virginia in the USA. And usually when I describe EV, Emergent Ventures, I always get a very long pause and strange looks because it is as simple as it will sound. It is you submit an application, typically no longer than 1,500 words, often much, much shorter than that. And someone reach out to you in a few days after the application, assuming it's not a very high, busy season. And then we have a brief chat, maybe 20 minutes, maybe no longer than 40. 40 is a big stretch. And about 2 weeks later, if we decide, hey, this is a fun project, a good project, or even a crazy project, even, you can get a grant to pursue that. And then you can typically get that grant, even like 2 weeks after application. So very fast turnaround and very no bureaucracy at all, very minimalist approach. And that's been going since 2018. More so 2019, but officially it was launched in 2018. And there are 2 or 3 large streams of it. There's Emergent Ventures, the normal category that covers most countries across the world. And then there's Emergent Ventures India that was started around 2020. And the lady that heads that city is also an economist at George Mason. And essentially, if you apply for a project in or about India, she will review your application, make the decision, and make a call either direction. And then last year, Mercatus decided to start a new stream called Emergent Ventures Africa and the Caribbean, or African Diaspora. We're kind of working name because it's a very large regional block. And I had that one, as you mentioned. And in such cases, If you have a project in Africa or about Africa, the application comes to me, I check it, I read it. Does it inspire me in some way? Do I find it interesting? Do I find it somewhat crazy but cool? You know, either direction. And then we can have a brief call and we can have a chat. And that's been going quite well. We've had a lot of applications actually from Nigeria. I think maybe the largest country besides Nigeria is, I think, Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa. I mean, that's not surprising in many ways. But also, a lot from Uganda, which is, I think, a bit surprising. It's somewhat to people there. So, yeah, a lot of Nigerian applications. Now, I would like to see even more applications. I think that a lot of the talent that's in Nigeria can be monetized in very efficient ways, and that can also lead to much larger progress and prosperity across the region and the country. In terms of what we are looking for as it pertains to math and more quantitative fields, you know, it's a very wide field. And usually I would like to fund some more essentially data science projects, or even, for example, now that a lot of the GPT systemology is actually kind of getting away, anyone has specific projects using GPT type systems in kind of progress related fields, that will also be a very attractive project. Or even, I actually did give a grant to someone in Rwanda just doing pure math research, actually some Euclidean geometry research they were doing at Ames in Rwanda. And like, you know, it was fun enough that I thought it was worth giving a grant to. Like, it's not even in pure math research or pure math education is qualifying as well. But I think a lot of good effort on GPT type systems would be, I think, a very attractive application. And I hope that people actually realize the impact that GPT type systems would have on the world and actually put their effort into it. I realize that a lot of people don't know how to, let's say, have the most market ready skill sets until it's a bit kind of you get into the market field and you realize, oh, I actually don't have the market ready skills. I think those kind of prompt structuring, GPT type system, data science type systems knowledge is always going to be very useful and more so useful in time. There's actually a project we fund in Ethiopia where the guy essentially runs a coding bootcamp. That's what I call it. He doesn't call it that because they don't really do coding per se. It's a data science and data analysis bootcamp where he takes university graduates recent from Ethiopia, train them up to have market-ready data science skills, and actually help them get remote jobs in Europe or Latin America or America, as UK as well. And the reason why he does that is because obviously when you get a remote job from those countries, you get paid a lot more than a domestic job in Ethiopia. And it's the same skills. You just have to learn how to use them the way how the Europeans or the Latin Americans or the British want to use their skill set. And usually the income for those students that go through the bootcamp tend to be at least 300 times greater than what they would have gotten doing that same job domestically in Ethiopia. And these are all students that went to either math or comp sci at their university level. So it's very high quantity fields, and that's been showing quite good progress. So I think when you think about those kind of skills, where if you're very good and you're very passionate about mathematical sciences, and you want to have, you know, some kind of market structured job, really harnessing those ideas and really getting those correct skills would be very, very, very powerful. Even to me, I also actually here in my office in Panama, I hire a lot of quant. I help run a hedge fund, so obviously it's very quant heavy. And when we hire the new associates or just very junior people, like, yes, of course they're very good at math. Granted, it's a basic requirement, but of course they don't really have a good to help apply that math or mathematical reasoning in different contexts. And that's not necessarily the easiest thing to teach, of course, but it's the skill that sets you apart quite quickly from other people. And it's hard to kind of explain that in a very short, pithy way. But I think if you kind of have if you have the basic quantitative knowledge and you have the passion, that is the starting point. It's not an end point. It's a means to an end. Of course, if you want to do a very more pure academic type career in mathematics, that's a different story, of course. I can't speak to that story. I didn't take that story. I did take that path. Now, in terms of advice, I think that usually people shy away from being outspoken or even being willing to randomly contact people across the world. I think given the internet world we live in, well, if you want to call it the metaverse if you wish, essentially a fear of it, that you need to be much more bold and much more willing to take social risk. I think people are okay to talk about, there's career risks or various risk in many other directions, but people are so undervalued when it comes to social risk, they don't take enough of it. And if you don't do that, especially when you're, let's say, on the periphery, and in many ways it's still the case in Nigeria, that you need to actually want to get into more global situations and take that kind of social risk. And very often people are willing to talk to people who they never met or never heard of. Even if you don't think it's true, it is always going to be true in cases this. And even if we make adventures, we don't know anyone to be friends. We get cold emails for the application and we have a chat. And that you would be mind blown how much that is across the world, but especially in American context as well. People in America are very, very high openness, are willing to have any kind of long conversation with a total stranger once the introduction to that person is motivated by some interest that they have themselves. So I say it that way. I have a lot could say about career points, but in the Q&A, I think that would be a bit easier. So I'll just end my opening here.
Wow. Thank you very much, Mr. Roy. That was quite a lot. I mean, I have some follow-up questions, but I think we can shift this to the Q&A part. And at this point, would like to also open the chat for the listeners to be able to ask their questions so that they don't forget this. And we're going to ask Mr. Rashid during the Q&A on those follow-up questions. So what I would like to do now is to shift the gear to our second speaker. I hope you did learn a lot from the first, keynote. There was so many new information to me even there. So I do believe that we must have picked one or two important information from that. So now I would like to now shift gear and move to our second speaker. Who is Miss Adora. So I'll just introduce her. I think she is on the call. Please, if you're on the call, I think you can, put on your video at this point so that I can introduce you properly. Hi, Adora. Can you hear me?
Hi, yes, I can hear you. I can't turn on my video. I sent a message, I'm not feeling well, so
yeah, sure.
Call from my bed.
All right, that works. That's fine. So as long as you're on the call and you're able to share your knowledge and wisdom with us, I think that's more than enough. So let me quickly introduce Adora. And this one of the talks I'm very excited to listen to because I believe that she has a lot of experience that would be very, very important for our students. Not only the fact that she is a well-known writer as well as a software engineer. Also the fact that she's doing a lot of great work and also helping women across tech space. I believe that our female students will be able to emulate some of the things that she has done. So basically, she is a multi-award winning software engineer based in Lagos, Nigeria. She currently works at Microsoft, where she builds mixed reality on the cloud. In fact, that's quite heavy, right? And apart from building all of these things, she is also a digital content creator. and the CEO of Lend a Land of Hope Initiative, an NGO. So an NGO focused on empowering young people in rural communities through education and skill acquisition. She has courses online that teaches people about infrastructure, automation. She has also published multiple articles on software engineering, productivity, and career growth on her blog, Adora Hack. In fact, I think after this call, you should search for her content on Adora Hack. I think it will be quite very useful for our students. Furthermore, she is the author of the popular book, Cloud Engineering for Beginners. This book is currently helping a lot of people start their career as cloud engineers. She's extremely passionate about the developer community in Nigeria, and she's trying to drive inclusion for women in technology. Please welcome to the stage, Adora.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining this from. I'm just gonna go ahead and pardon my voice and my, I'm not feeling at my best at the moment. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen right now.
Sure.
Yeah, so please let me know when you can see it.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Okay, so thanks for that introduction. Just as a part of the presentation, I'll just go over a quick introduction of myself again. My name is Adora, and I am a software engineer currently building mixed reality on the cloud at Microsoft. I'm also an author of 2 books, well, 2.5, because I don't classify the third one as a book, but some people call it a book, so might as well just, the third one is a DevOps study guide that I created earlier this year. The first book is Cloud Engineering for Beginners, and the second one is a book on Azure DevOps, beginning Azure DevOps, that is getting released in a couple of days, actually, on Wiley. And I'm a digital creator. I post content, video content on Instagram, on YouTube, constantly sharing, some tips and, some ideas of like how you can grow and start your career. And I also share about my life as a software engineer sometimes. I also have a community called Adora Hack Study Group, and I recently started a mentorship program for cloud engineers. In this first cohort, we've taken 10 people, and it's going really well so far. I'm just going to tell a quick story about how I got into tech. And I got exposed to computers at a very young age. I was like 6 years old when I got my first computer, or when the first computer was bought in my house, because it wasn't mine. It was for my elder siblings, but I mean, I was using this too. So I was 6 years old when we got the computer, and from that moment, I was very fascinated by the technology. It's like, oh wow, so you can press this button and tell it to do this thing, and it does exactly that, And I became very fascinated about the technology, and because of that, I got into computers, computing, the internet, coding, and all of that stuff. And I became very intentional about taking my computer classes, my ICT courses seriously. However, I didn't know much about research at that time. So when I was in SS2, I wanted to SS2, SS3 actually, because I think it's SS3 that you feel like your jam form and do all of that stuff. Because I went to a Nigerian university, I went to Unilag. So I wanted to actually study math in uni and learn to code because I really love math. I still do, to be honest. Because I didn't know that you could actually study computer science in school or anything like that. I didn't know that there was something called computer science. I knew that there was something called computer programming, and I didn't think that computer programmer was a degree you could get in school because I'd never seen it before. And this is where, mentorship and wise counsel actually comes in, because I told my other siblings and a bunch of people around me about like things that I wanted to do. And my eldest brother had a friend that was currently in MIT at the time getting a master's. And he told me that, oh, you want to code? That's nice. Go and do computer science instead. There's math inside since you said you like math. If he didn't do that, I would have probably gone on to do math. And the way my life has gone might have not been the way it would have gone. Like, so I'm not saying that if I did math, my life would be better or worse, but it would be different because the role that different people I have met because I chose that path, the roles that they've played in my life is ultimately the reason why I am in front of this computer giving this talk today, because I leverage people around me. People are my greatest resource. Before I start looking at courses and books and all these things, I talk to people, talk to them to get ideas from them, to seek advice from them and things like that. So, I got into computer science and that was it, started taking all my courses. I'm an ethical, for lack of a better word. So I take school very seriously. And, I was doing all of that. And then got my first job in 2016 in my fourth year. Computer science is 5 years in Unilag. So in my fourth year, I got my first job as an intern, worked for 6 months. That's the compulsory IT Cyrus program that you have to do. But even after that program, I didn't want to leave the company. So I still stayed. So when I was in my final year, I was working and I was in school at the same time. And at that point, I had like a job. I was getting paid a salary. I was doing things. Once in a while, I'll visit the office, and then I continued that journey when I graduated, still worked at that job for a bit. And then after a while, when I started getting tired of it, it was around the time the opportunity for Microsoft came. I was actually thinking about going abroad to the same MIT because that guy eventually had an influence on my career early on. It was like the first mentor I ever had. So like, because he went to MIT, I was thinking about going to MIT too. And we already started having conversations around what that would be like. And I was planning to take my GREs and all of that stuff because that's what I wanted to do. And the Microsoft opportunity came around that time. And it just made sense for me because it's like I would have gone to MIT and graduated so that I could end up in Microsoft in the first place. But I can get into Microsoft right now. So why am I spending over $100,000? Doesn't make any sense. So we had the conversation again. Advice and wise counsel is important because these same people sat me down and spoke to me and let me know what's important, and I made a decision. That's how I got into Microsoft, and I've been contributing ever since. Over time, over the course of my career, I've picked up public speaking, I've picked up community building, I've picked up content creation, I've picked up authoring and a bunch of other things, and I still plan to pick up more things as I go along. But the fundamental part of my career, which is software engineering, is the story that I just shared now. I am one of the few girls that exist in STEM. There are not many girls in STEM like me. And it's sad and annoying. There's some rooms that I walk into and I don't see as many girls. There's some pictures of, founders and their teams when they're talking about, oh, we raised money. And you see like 7 men in that picture. You see 2 girls in that picture, all wearing the brand shirts. I mean, I'm happy that there are girls in that picture, but there are not many. And another thing is, I don't have the backing in terms of the numbers and statistics to prove it, but it's all around me. I'm looking at it and I can see it. I have noticed that there are more girls that are, more inclined to choose non-technical roles in tech than the technical roles. So I know more girls in tech as product managers, as marketers, as product designers, and I don't know as many girls as software engineers. So the main question here is, how do we actually get more girls in STEM? First thing I want to say is that early exposure is important. One of the reasons why people are the way they are right now, today, is because of how they were raised, things they were taught, their value systems imbibed in them from their families and things like that. As a young boy, you're more likely going to get a video game before your sister. As a young girl, you're more likely as a child going to be playing with a bunch of nice, cute teddy bears and a Barbie doll. I'm not saying these things are bad. I have them too. However, maybe because I had elder brothers, because I don't think that my career would have gone the way it did if I didn't have that early exposure to technology. Now, it's different nowadays, and that's because technology has become more of an enabler than an intriguing thing. Then it was a bit intriguing, to live a mostly analog life and then get introduced to digital stuff. So I was intrigued, right? But now it's like digitization is all around us. So to even get a girl into STEM, whether you've bought her an iPad and she's on YouTube and she's Googling things for her assignments and things like that early on as primary school, that's not enough to get them into STEM because they're just using the tech to make their lives easier. They're not using the tech to create things. But when we were younger, you'd see that, oh, you give boys video games and they start having these, as much as they play the game, it helps, further develop their critical thinking skills. And for some inquisitive young men, you see them asking questions like, oh, how did they build this thing? I want to go build it too. And there's so many boys that when you sit them down and ask them, how did you get into programming? The ones that don't have a story similar to mine, which is, oh, my dad bought me my first computer. Many of them would always say, I started through gaming. It was because I was a gamer as a child. Right? So early exposure is important. And because of that, my friend and I, we've actually started going to secondary schools to talk to young girls about possible careers in STEM, right? So we're introducing girls to STEM fields at a young age through programs and activities that make learning fun and engaging for them. And my friend and I, we can't do this thing alone. We need other people to, create these programs like extracurricular programs, STEM-focused events in schools that highlight the importance of STEM education and things like that. And it's important to catch them young. It's easy to get a girl that is young, motivated enough to want to pursue a career in STEM than to tell a woman that is all grown, has her own life going for herself to, learn about the possibilities of transitioning into STEM. And I'm not saying hold people's hands and force them to come into STEM because of, whatever it is. But let people know the possibilities that exist. Let people know the careers, like what they can have. Because truth is, a lot of people actually are not taking, and I've heard many women say these things, a lot of people are not taking up careers in STEM, not because they know about these careers and they are not interested, but because they don't know that they can actually do it. They feel like they can't. Many people have been fed with the whole engineering is a man's course, don't do it. Right? So from a very young age, I already was thinking, oh, I'm a woman, I can't do it, let me not try. But the point is to expose them early enough and break that stereotype that nowadays you don't need yes, maybe if it's a job that requires physical power, we know that the male gender is, more powerful than the female gender physically. But when it comes to brain, your mental capacity, everybody has a brain and everybody can use it. So we just need to expose these women to, the possibilities and let them know, these young girls rather, and let them know that if you're a smart person, you can do STEM if you want to. Let that now be a decision you make for yourself. You choose to do it or you choose not to, not that the society has chosen for you. The next thing I want to talk about is mentorship and role models. And I say this a lot. If you pick a young girl and you ask her, who do you want to be like? She's probably going to tell you, I want to be like Michelle Obama. I want to be like Beyonce. So Nigerian girls tell you they want to be like Aya Star and Tiwa Savage because these are the female public figures they see. It's not a problem. These are amazing women. Don't get me wrong. However, we should also try to, create that connection to female role models as well. We should spotlight more women in tech doing amazing things so that girls can see those women and say, oh, I like this woman. I want to be like her too. So we should connect girls with more female role models and mentors who are successful in the STEM field so that they can have people like them to look up to. It can break stereotypes and it can provide girls with better understanding of the opportunities that are available to them. Because if someone says, if as a girl you say, oh, I want to be a software engineer, and then maybe one boy in your class tells you, oh no, you can't do that, it's a man's course. You can be like, oh, nope. There's this girl that I know, her name is Adora, and she's doing it and she's so good at it. So you can't tell me that I can't do it because I know Adora and Adora is doing it. Because now you've been exposed to people that are doing this. So we need to create that up. And that's for me what's International Women's Day and Women's Month should be about. Spotlighting these women and then creating opportunities, not hosting Twitter spaces to talk about what we can do to drive inclusion. We already know what we can do. Talking about it is not going to magically make us start doing it. So let's start doing it. The next thing is community engagement. Engage in local communities to promote the importance of STEM education and its relevance in the lives of these women. This can help to create a culture of support for girls who are interested in pursuing careers in STEM fields. I have a community that I'm launching currently doing that. I'll be launching this community in a week, so you can stay glued to my social media for the announcement when I announce that. Another community that I know is doing this so well right now is She Code Africa, right? Because in the early stages of tech, especially for women that don't even believe in themselves in the first place, they want a safe space. They want a space where they can see other people like them and, there is support for them to start those careers. And She Code Africa is currently doing that. Shout out to the founder. I think what they're doing is very amazing, right? And we should support more community engagements for women. We should sponsor more of these kinds of events. We should host more of those things for women to find each other, connect with each other, engage in communities together, learn and grow from each other, meet their mentors, and just, because the ecosystem is very, very important. The next thing I would say is that we should address the bias. We've also sort of talked about this, where I talked about, the importance of, mentorship and having women role models, but like we should also address that bias and discrimination that discourages girls from pursuing STEM careers in the first place. So creating safe spaces for them and supportive environments for them to learn and grow, addressing unconscious biases that may exist in hiring and promotion practices. Women that are already in leadership should, throw the ladders down for the women that are, starting out their careers to be able to climb through, create a bunch of things that programs and structures and things that help women thrive, give women money as well. There's this pattern that I'm beginning to see, and I'm very vocal about it, right? I've seen many people that want to teach everybody, you know, there's this training, there's this boot camp, there is this accelerator program. Everybody wants to teach, nobody wants to support. If you see a woman that is trying to build a tech startup, if you see people building women-led tech startups, support them with your money if you feel like the idea is a viable idea, right? If you see a young girl that is very great at programming, plug her into some opportunities, job opportunities. Don't be giving people trainings and advice upon advice. I'm a big fan of mentorship, but I'm a bigger fan of sponsorship, right? I like people to give me advice because it helps me learn and grow. One of the main reasons why I'm here today is because of the advice I took when I was younger. However, you should also plug people to opportunities financially and other kinds of opportunities that they need, especially those from underprivileged backgrounds. They need this a lot. Yeah, so these are some communities for women in tech. If you'd like to join, these are the links. You could go to She Code Africa. You could also go to my study group. The link is there. We're currently in the middle of a rebrand, and we would properly announce in a week's time, I believe. There's also WeTech, FemCode Africa, Cyber Girls, and a lot more. But these are like my top 5. So if you want to take a screenshot, here, or I could actually just share the slides with the team and they could share it to everybody. Thank you very much for listening.
Wow. Thank you so much, Adora. I think that's, wow, I could just say, wow, that's a lot of information to take in, especially for our female students who, I would say even in Olympiad, we see a lot of disparity between how many girls do qualify to the final rounds as compared to boys. And we are actually also very particular about, encouraging more girls to get into these competitions, to showcase their talent and skills. And your speech has really highlighted all of the things we've been telling our students. So thank you so much for the passionate submission. Right, so I think we about time to move to our next speaker. But before we do that, I just want to tell our listeners that you can start to send in your questions, right? So you can start sending your questions to the chat. The chat is open to all the participants, the audience, to send in their questions for our speakers, so that we don't lose track of those, so that you don't actually forget what you want to ask the speakers. All right. So at this junction, I would like to move to our third speaker. As you see, I think we are right about time, right, to move to our third speaker. So I'll just quickly introduce him. He has also a similar, I wouldn't say background, but basically he's also a software engineer, right? He studied applied mathematics at Kazan Federal University, Russia. And he's passionate about problem solving, chess, as well as building solution and tech startups. So he currently works as a software engineer at Yandex Moscow, right? Please, I would like to welcome Joshua Mokut to the stage.
Thank you very much, Abdul. It's quite an honor to be here. Honestly, after the first two speakers, I feel like I'm a bit out of my league here. But yeah, it's an honor to be here. And that was really wonderful, by the way, Adora. It's the message to girls getting into STEM. That's really awesome. And I totally support that. So yeah. I'm just gonna give a little story about myself, a little backstory, starting from, say, how I got to where I am today, actually. So back in school, back in primary school, as a young kid, I was good in school. I did the normal school work, and I also had brothers who were like maybe 9. My immediate older brother is about 9 years older than I am. And he had this math textbooks, just lying around the house, which I would occasionally pick up and look at a few problems that, are kind of out of my league and try to solve them. The math textbooks are actually quite interesting because, they'd show you how to solve an example, and then there'd be a list of problems to follow. And so I did that a lot, and my brothers were also really helpful, which is kind of similar to what Adora mentioned earlier, having those elder brothers at home. It was super, super helpful because they were always the first people I go to if I had any problems in math or any other subjects, but mostly math. And that kind of piqued my interest in mathematics quite early. So by the time I was in primary 4, I was already trying to solve my brother's SS2 math or SS3 mathematics. By the time I was in maybe JS2, I could probably get somewhere around 70% in JAM mathematics. And it was quite interesting for me. It was fun to do all that. And, I think from there, the next stage was, because the math we had in school was already past behind what I already knew. So the next stage for me was going for competitions. And that's when I started participating in mathematics competitions for high school. It was included, some of you know cowbell. I don't know if they still host those competitions now. I think they may have stopped. But then, yeah, we had cowbell I participated in cowbell in JS3 and also participated in SS2. That was sometime 2014, 2015. And yeah, it was fun going for those competitions because you weren't just solving the mathematics that was for secondary, like for your class. You could get the chance to solve something a bit more difficult. I especially loved Olympiads, Nigerian Mathematics Olympiads, the NEMO. It was super fun solving those problems. I got the books from National Mathematics Center. I grew up in Calabar, and it wasn't exactly like the most developed city, so schools weren't exactly participating at the national stage of Nigerian Mathematics Olympiad, but I ordered the textbooks, and I had a friend also named Joshua, by the way, who was also interested in Mathematics Olympiad and would solve these problems together, learn these concepts together. It was really exciting. It was really good. It was really fun. And yeah. And so concerning how competitions in high school influenced my choice of field, well, I think it's quite obvious at this point that after all that, getting to SS3, my mind was just like, you know what, I'm going to study math. Yeah, I have to study math. Like, what else is there to study? I don't know chemistry. I mean, I was good at chemistry. I did get a good grade, but it wasn't exactly something I enjoyed doing. It was just something I did because, well, it looks like math. It's pretty much similar, so I'll just do it, And yeah, so when I was in SS3, I took JAM, and well, in Nigeria, I applied for chemical engineering instead of mathematics because I had this notion that there's no way you're going to study applied mathematics in Nigeria and do something interesting when you're done. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if it's not true, but I had that notion that, I'll finish studying applied mathematics in university in Nigeria, what Uniport, I applied to Uniport, by the way. I'll finish studying applied mathematics, and then what? I'll become a lecturer, which is cool. I'm not saying there's anything bad about that, but I wanted more challenging things to do. I wanted new challenges every day. And so I just, applied for chemical engineering. But at the same time, I was applying for a scholarship in Russia, which was the Federal Scholarship Board's bilateral education agreement, which might be useful for lots of people lots of students in high school now. The scholarship is still ongoing every year. Nigerian government sends about 60 students to different countries. Oh, I think 60 students to Russia, and then a few more students to other countries, Hungary, and so on. And so I applied for that scholarship. And for that scholarship, I indicated that the course I wanted to study was applied mathematics. And so as it would happen, I got the scholarship to Russia to study applied mathematics at Kazan Federal University. And that was really great because it was all my dreams coming true. Getting a scholarship, studying abroad, studying the course I want to study was fun. It was exciting. So I arrived in Russia without any knowledge of the language, which shouldn't scare people off because it's really not that hard. I mean, yeah, it's actually a bit hard, but it's just another problem you just have to solve. Think of it like math. And so, yeah, I learned the language. And by the way, all this while, I knew absolutely nothing about programming. Yes, I mean, I had an app on my phone. I don't remember what it's called, but it was an app that taught you how to program in Python, but I wasn't even taking it seriously. So I was just like doing it. And when I got into my first year here in Russia, I went to the Olympiad Center of my university and I asked them, are there any Olympiads I can participate in? It was really straight to the point. I wasn't even playing around. And they told me, well, what kind of Olympiads do you want? I said math. They said, well, we don't have math, but we have something close. And that's programming. I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, let's do programming Olympiads. So I started learning programming because I wanted to participate in programming Olympiads. I learned Python, I learned C++, and just continued in my ways of competition in college as well. And I was, well, for the first year, of course, I was more focused on school because I had to get good grades, at least get familiar with the courses. Since the courses weren't in English, they were mostly in Russian. But since it was mathematics, I didn't have to listen to what they were saying. I mean, although I did listen, but mostly I was just looking at what was written on the board. Math is kind of a language of its own, so the Russian didn't really affect it much. And so, yeah, I learned C++, I learned Python, I started learning algorithms and data structures. Those were all extracurricular activities. They had nothing to do with school, at least for the first 2 years. We only had the course algorithms and data structures in my third year. But by then, I had already started participating in online programming competitions, which are available on various sites online, like Code Forces, and there's LeetCode, which is pretty popular among people who, well, solve programming problems for getting, maybe for interviews and stuff. And so I had been participating through my first year, my second year. I had also started participating in ICPC, which is an equivalent of IOI, International Olympiad on Informatics, or IMO, for those who know, International Mathematics Olympiad, but it's for college students. It's pretty much the most prestigious, as far as I know, the most prestigious college programming competition. And I had a goal to get to the finals of that competition. So we had a team and we were working towards that goal together. So we'd practice, would have practice sessions, and would have personal sessions as well. And there, the practice sessions were pretty consistent. We would have maybe 2 practice sessions every week. Those practice sessions will last for about 5 hours. We'll just come together and solve programming problems together as a team, have a contest, a virtual contest that would simulate a real world contest, and just practice those problems. So we wanted to get to the world finals, though we didn't get there. We did get to the North Eurasian finals, where we got a 3rd-degree diploma and honorable mentions, maybe 2 times or 3. I don't remember, this 2021 and 2022, yeah. And so that was a very amazing experience for me because it showed pretty much, I think it taught me the value of teamwork, how having a community around you, a group of people who are like-minded, who are going towards the same goals, how that can influence your drive and how that can really help you get ahead. Well, although during the process, I didn't really realize how far ahead we had gotten, but over time, when we're getting towards the end of our competitive programming career and I was starting to look out for a job, I started to see how much that will help, because when you're applying for a software engineer role, usually, not always, but usually you will go through an interview process that is where you're asked algorithms and data structure problems or some kind of mathematical problems, or you have to write some code and you have to do it under pressure in 45 minutes or maybe 40 minutes, depending on the company, sometimes an hour. And for the past, say, 5 years, I had been practicing on how to solve problems of similar difficulties to those interviews in just maybe 10 minutes. So it was a massive help when I was going through those interviews, and I'd be given a problem that's supposed to take maybe 15, 20 minutes. And while the interviewer is reading out the problem, I already have a solution in my mind. And I was like, oh, okay, that's good. So it was one of the real competitive edge it gave me in the real world, because I think most people practice a lot for these interviews, and I was able to just walk into those interviews with very little to no practice and still have a pretty good performance. And so yeah, I got my first job when I was in my third year, and that was in a startup in Kazan. And then I got just last year, I got an offer from Yandex, which is for those of you who don't know what Yandex is, it's pretty much like Russia's Google. It's Google, but it's in Russia. So, well, it's not Google technically. It's a search engine, and it does many other things. So they have different services. It's one of the top IT companies in Russia and pretty much in most of Eastern Europe. And I last year as well, I got an offer from Google towards the end of the year. I was also interviewing with Google as well as with Yandex, pretty much from the first quarter of the year, but it took a while. And through everything, the difficult times in tech and all that, I was really surprised and pleased to get an offer at the end of the year. And yeah, I think a huge part of that I would attribute to, a huge part of that success I would attribute to my competitions during the university years. And so just to go through a few advices, maybe attributes to some kind of practices that would help with improving problem-solving skills. So like Adora said, I think early exposure is super duper important. It has to be there. I didn't have early exposure in programming, but I did have early exposure in mathematics, which pretty much translates to programming at the end of the day. Anyone with a good mind, a mind that, can wrap itself around mathematics easily, that person would definitely excel in programming. I've seen it happen so many times, and it's definitely totally possible. And the second thing is community. Have a group of like-minded people around you, but don't take it too far. It's just your friends in school that also love math, or your friends in school that also do this. It could be not in your school, it could be in another school. So just, get together with them often, solve problems together. We have SMA, you have people you make friends with and just talk to often. You have a problem, just send it to them. Hey, I have this problem. You think it's cool? Do you want to solve a cool problem? I had a friend through college who would just chat me up. He doesn't say, hi, how are you? All of that. He just goes like, do you want to solve a cool problem? And I'm like, sure, dude. So yeah, we had all that. And the third thing is competitions. It's awesome that SMA is actually having lots of students who are performing at the Nigerian Mathematics Olympiad and at the international level as well, because competitions are I think for me, they were very important. They keep you motivated. You know that you're no longer competing with your classmates, you're competing with the world. You're competing with the best minds all around the world. And that can be a very huge drive. And the last thing I'd like to mention is consistent practice. Practice consistently. That's the only way you get better. There's no magic to it. In programming, in software engineering, if you're trying to get into programming, there's no magic to it. Pretty much is learn a programming language and just write a lot of code or make mistakes and learn from them. Yeah. So that's that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Joshua. Learning about your experience there, there are some sort of similarities, in what most of our team members have gone through during their secondary school days and then the transition to university. I myself also can relate a lot with some of the things that you shared. In terms of your friends sending you problems, or whether it was school, I think that's basically Mesomachi and Pius in play. So, so yeah, we can definitely relate to that. So thank you so much for the passionate submission. I really enjoyed that a lot. Now, because we are a little bit behind time, so I would like to quickly shift gears and move to the next item on today's conversation. Please do keep sending in your questions for our speakers. They're going to address them when we get to the question and answer session. So basically now at this juncture, I would like to introduce something that we at SMA have been working on for quite some time, right? Before we move to our next speaker, of course, which who is already on the call, right? So I'll just like to introduce you to our current project that we are working on. Share. All right, so yeah, so I have the pleasure of working with the amazing guys at SMA, and we believe that there's still a bit of gap between how our students who are just starting out in their journey from primary 4, 5, 6, JSS1, JSS2, people are just starting out, and then actually introducing them to the world of Olympiad, right? So this is why we are coming up with a book series that will actually address this knowledge gap between what they are being taught in class and actually Olympiad level mathematics. So our first 2 books that will be coming out, if you're interested in this, please do send us an email, our social media platform, anywhere you can reach us. We'll be more than happy to put you on the list of people who would get the first opportunities to get these books when they are out. Right, so we'll start with algebra and later on geometry would follow. So these are the authors, you already know the instructors at Special Maths who are currently working on this project. So I'm excited to share this thing with you because it's been like a project we've been working on for the last year, and it's been like a tough journey to do this. And I do believe that once these books come out, they'll really do that. They'll really bridge that gap between the current level of our students and how to actually start solving, Olympiad type of problems, right? So we still have one more announcement at the end of this, so stay tuned, don't go anywhere. Now, would like to now introduce our, I think our 4th speaker now. So I'll quickly introduce her, then she can pick up the mic and share her story and her wisdom with us, so that our students can learn a lot from her. So basically, Ms. Adobe studied electrical and electronics engineering, right, at the University of Manchester, where she built and ran a solar training company for 2 years. Right. So upon graduation, she built a number of different data science projects, receiving funding from Emergent Ventures, Pioneer, and also Entrepreneur First. She is currently a research assistant at the Francis Crick Institute, co-investigator on the Apple I genetics project at King's College London, and is also the founder of Jargon, a machine learning tool that converts scientific jargon into plain English that recently went viral. She also gives regular public talks. She has spoken at TEDx, Man Group, and the Royal Society of Medicine. Please welcome on stage, Adobe Adebe.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Adobe, and I'm currently in the UK. And I guess, you've already introduced me. So, my background is a bit varied. I did engineering, I did data science and AI. I did engineering, I did AI stuff, and now I do science. Someone just actually asked me right now, what is the purpose of this call if I don't have an interest in mathematics? And I think from my understanding, is that the stuff that I've learned from my own journey can be applicable to your own journey. I think you can still learn a lot from different people outside of your field, and hopefully some of you guys can take away something from that. And so I think the way that I would like to go about this is that I'm just going to talk through 10 principles that I carry for myself that I think are super important, and that hopefully you guys can internalize too if you feel it's right for you. And so the first thing that I would like to say, like the most important principle that I found in my own life and has taken me very far, is to be audacious. And what I mean by be audacious is that I find a lot of people feel like they need to be at a certain level of skill before they can attempt to do something. And unfortunately, that's not how the world works. The world doesn't reward the most talented person. I think the world rewards the person who asks and who is bold enough to ask. And so in my case, for example, with the solar training company, I really had no business starting that company. I think I was only 18 or 19. But I felt like I was good enough. And so I convinced some big companies in Nigeria to fund it and fly me out and taught myself basically how to build all of these solar gadgets. And that wasn't because I was the most talented or anything like that. It was just because I was audacious enough. And audacity doesn't need to be grand gestures like that. Audacity can simply be sending a cold email. So if you would like to work with someone, sending an email, introducing yourself, saying, hey, I'm XYZ, and I would really like to work with you. And you'll find that at least 5 times out of 10, people will respond because most people don't ask. So that would be my first point, be audacious. And that kind of brings me to my second point, to make your own opportunities. So yeah, that's something that I've actually consistently done for myself. So I think I can count on my hand the number of times I've actually ever applied for a job. And that's because I think creating your own opportunities just always usually leads to higher levels of success, in that you kind of stand out more. And so I will give an example in that when I was in university, I was kind of trying to decide like what it is that I wanted to do. I knew that I kind of wanted to work for myself, but I didn't necessarily know how I wanted to do that. And so I found a way to end up, giving a talk at a lot of these hedge funds, at a lot of different companies. And what would end up happening is that at the end of these talks that I would give, people would actually end up offering me jobs without me applying. And I definitely don't think I would have been offered these jobs if I had applied through the traditional route, because it's just a lot harder to stand out. There's just a lot more competition. And I've applied this kind of mindset to everything. So for example, right now I'm a scientist, and I can kind of go into why I pivoted into science later, if anyone is curious. But I didn't study biology. I haven't done biology or chemistry or anything like that since I was in high school. But now I'm a scientist at a really big institute leading my own project, and I got funded for a science project. And that's really because I just sent out some emails. I just said like, hey, I'm really passionate about XYZ thing. And I was able to prove my passion by writing. So that's another thing. Like, so long as you can prove that you're serious about what you say, because most people ask, but a lot of people aren't serious. But if you can ask and prove that you're serious, I think your stats go up to like 9 times out of 10, somebody is going to say yes. And so I had basically proven that I was really serious about this interest, and again, ended up getting a job, even though like the minimum requirement for this job is usually like master's or PhD. And I have like neither, and I also come from a completely different field. So yeah, create your own opportunities. Like I think it's always possible, and is usually the better way, for me anyways. Which brings me on to my next point, to be resourceful. I think most people feel like whatever that they want to achieve, they need a bit more money, they need a bit more connections first. And most times you actually have everything you need to get to where you want to get to. So in my case, I wanted to become a scientist because I had basically been diagnosed with kidney failure. And I realized that the solutions surrounding kidney failure were very, very terrible. And if I did not try to solve it, like probably nothing was going to change in the next 50 years. And so that required me to shift careers and try to solve my own problem. And if I needed to solve my own problem, I needed to become a scientist, and I needed to learn the science of the kidney and all that other jazz. The problem was, obviously, I had no connections. I had no industry network in academia, in biomedical research whatsoever. But the one thing that I did have was doctors, because I was a patient. And so, like I said, coming back to my first and second point, being audacious and making your own opportunities, I literally wrote a 2-page essay, basically about my research into the kidney and just asking really good questions about why things work the way they do. I sent it to all my doctors, And I'm sure they were very surprised. They didn't really expect a patient to do that. And I basically told them that I would like to work on one of their research projects as one of the researchers. And only one person got back to me, but I only needed one person to get back to me. You don't need a lot of yeses, you just need one. And from there, that led to my first research role. And then from there, that led to me being a proper researcher at a very big institute in London. And that would have never happened if I didn't just think to use the resources that I have, which was the fact that I was a patient and I have doctors. So yeah, that's being resourceful. And that brings me on to my next thing, which is that a lot more is possible than you think. When I had decided that I was going to solve my own problem, I think the natural response from my friends or from other people in the field really was that it would take like several years to get up to speed. I'd have to go and do a degree again. I have to do undergrad, have to get a master's, have to get a PhD. And that's just not true. I think a lot more is possible than you think in a shorter amount of time than you think. And most people operate in life based on assumptions. They think certain things are the way that they are, but they've never actually attempted them themselves. And so that's something that I try to internalize as well. Like, if I think I can do something in 2 months, then I'm going to try and do it in 2 months. And if I fail, fine. But most times it will end up being 3 or 4 months rather than someone telling me that I needed to spend years doing something. And so I think you guys should internalize that too, that like a lot of things are possible in this world. And I mean, it's kind of like what Steve Jobs says, right? Everything around you is created by somebody else. So there's no reason why you can't do that. And I think a lot of people think that they don't have that, they're not capable of doing these things because they don't see themselves as an academic genius. But I personally think being an academic genius is overrated. I think having audacity, having a certain level of intelligence, just like, I don't even think I'm a very intelligent person. I think I'm a very mediocre intelligent person in terms of academics, but being audacious, being resourceful, making your own opportunities, and thinking for yourself and just moving with urgency will get you a lot further than somebody who is super, super smart. So yeah, I think you guys should remember that a lot more is possible than you think, and you should always go for what you want to do. The next thing is, this one is particularly focused on the girls, but I guess all of you guys too, since I'm going to assume that the majority of us are Black. So I'm Black and I'm in the UK. And when I did my engineering course, I was the only Black, British, Nigerian person on my course out of 200. And then I think there was a few number of girls too, but I was definitely like one of 2 Black girls out of 200 people. And I think common thinking is that, you know, a lot of girls are naturally intimidated by being around a lot of guys and all of this stuff. And then it gets even worse if you're Black in a predominantly white space. But I feel like my philosophy in life has always been like not to focus on what you lack. And it's obviously easier said than done. But I feel like the idea that people say like you can't be what you can't see is wrong. You can be what you can't see. And I think people should become very comfortable with being the first or pioneering a movement. I think the idea that you can't be what you can't see comes from the thinking that, you know, you should aspire to be the average. And you don't need to be the average. If you want to be the first Nigerian on the moon, I don't think you should aspire to be the first Nigerian on the moon. But if you want to go on the moon, like, you don't need to wait for somebody else to do that, because if everybody else is waiting, then nothing is going to happen. So I think, you know, you can also draw inspiration from people who aren't in your field. So like somebody here, I can't remember their name, who messaged me privately, like, what can you learn from my talk if I don't do mathematics? Like, I personally look up to people who aren't in the engineering field, or who aren't in the STEM field, who are Black women, for example. But I try to copy and understand and admire their underlying traits. So for example, like a big inspiration to me is Beyonce. It doesn't necessarily mean that I want to be Beyonce or be an entertainer, no. But I really like her work ethic. And I really like how she's broken a lot of barriers and a lot of doors in her own field and sort of taken it to a next level. And I think that you can apply what she's done to your own field. And that's what I try to do with my scientific research. So yeah, I think you can be what you can't see. The next point is that I think you should always follow your curiosity. I think it's very easy and tempting to follow the hype train. So right now it's AI, and everybody wants to get involved in like AI and all that stuff. But the truth is that sure, like AI will probably be around for a long time. But if you really want to change the game, if you really want to push yourself, you should go to where people are really looking. And that usually involves you just following your curiosity. Now, your curiosity might naturally be leading you to AI, and that's fine. But most times your curiosity leads you to things that people aren't really paying attention to. And sometimes people are quick to dismiss this feeling because they're like, well, it's not important. Or sometimes people try to overplan their lives and they're like, well, I want to be a mathematician, and, you know, doing art has no relation to mathematics, so I'm not going to follow this interest. But the truth is that you don't know how life is going to connect the dots for you. And so in my own life, for example, I did electrical engineering because I wanted to be like Iron Man in the comic books. I did not have, like, I knew that I wanted to start some sort of tech company, but that's as far as it went. I also took this research position, this genetics position, because I wanted to learn research. I didn't necessarily have a particular interest in that research project, but I wanted to learn the skills. And now it turns out that the work that I'm doing actually combines electrical engineering and this genetics research. And so now I'm uniquely suited to actually attack this problem in a way that a lot of people aren't. And that only happened because I followed my curiosity. So your curiosity can lead you to super far places. And it doesn't mean that it's going to take you super far all the time, but most times, like, the decisions that I've regretted have been when I have purposely not followed my curiosity. And then it turns out that I need that skill later on. And I'm like, damn, if I had just followed my curiosity, like, I would have been able to just execute straight away. So yeah, follow your curiosity. Another thing is to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So like I said, I didn't have a background in science, so I had to, one, learn a lot of biology, because it's actually a full-time job. It's not an internship. It's not some sort of training fellowship. Like, it's a real job. And so I had to get up to speed in a whole field in like 4 weeks. And not only that, I had to learn the techniques. And not only that, I'm the only one on the project leading it. So I had a lot to learn, and it was very uncomfortable and it was very painful. But I've had to learn how to get comfortable with that feeling because it means that I'm growing. And I think if you're someone who wants to consistently grow, you have to find a way to trick your brain to fall in love with pain, basically, to fall in love with pain, fall in love with being uncomfortable. And that's really the only way that you can grow, unfortunately. You don't have to grow, but if you want to, then you need to fall in love with that feeling. Brings me on to my next thing, to not be afraid to do things alone. So one of my biggest regrets in life, like I said, I'm in the UK. One of the biggest regrets in my life is that when I was in secondary school, I finished my GCSEs, got really high grades. I went to an all-black secondary school, pretty much. And I got an offer to study at this really great sixth form, but it was predominantly white. And I'd never been in a predominantly white space before. And so I decided to not go because I didn't want to be the only Black person there. And I went to this other school, which was predominantly Black. And I think that was the wrong decision because I think I robbed myself of a really great education. And I really, really did that because I was afraid of being alone. I was afraid of being an outsider. I was afraid of kind of being the first, being what you couldn't see. And at the end of the day, that just ended up hurting me. And I can say the same for a lot of other decisions that I regret. Like, I wanted to be part of the chemistry Olympiad, and I didn't do it because I couldn't convince other people to join me. And I obviously regret that because if I had done that, maybe I would have landed in this position a lot quicker. I mean, I'm still in the same position, but like still. So I think not being afraid to do things alone, even if people around you aren't interested or don't think that what you're doing has any validity, because yeah, like I think most times I personally have like an internal voice or an internal guidance system. And usually when it says I should do something, it's usually right. And if I don't follow it, I usually regret it. And so sometimes you have to make the uncomfortable decision of pursuing things on your own, and it will be painful, it will be lonely, but it will pay off. So you just have to kind of be courageous enough to make that decision. Nearly done, just 2 more points. My second to last one is to work hard. It's kind of like what I said earlier. I think a lot of people operate in the world based on the fact that they think intelligence will take them really, really far. Like if you're smart, if you're some sort of genius, then you're more likely to create a huge company or make lots of money or be super successful. And I think in some instances, it probably does increase your chances of success. But I think a really good work ethic can take you a lot further than just natural intelligence. And I think nowadays it's kind of become not fashionable to say that people should work hard. But I think you can really beat out a lot of competition and also really impress yourself about what you can create and what you can do by putting in the work. And now working hard doesn't mean, for example, like you're working hard Monday to Wednesday, and then, for example, you know, your friends have asked you to go out Thursday and Friday, or something has happened and you're like, okay, well, you can't really do this, you can't really do that. Like working hard is working hard. Working hard is making no excuses for yourself. So using myself as an example, not necessarily, like I'm not saying everybody should do this, but I have to do dialysis 3 times a week. I mean, I have every excuse in the world not to work hard or not to come into the office or just to rest and all of this stuff. And I'm sure that people would not fault me for it. But at the end of the day, like I have my own goals. And I think being able to prove to myself and have that discipline and working hard has taken me 50 times, 1,000 times further than whatever small intelligence that I have. And like I said, working hard is not just about the intensity. Like I think for me, working hard is not making excuses when life naturally does get in the way, because life gets in the way for everybody, and still being disciplined. That's what working hard means to me. So I think if you can work hard, then I think you'll go pretty far. And then my last point is just to have your own goals. I think something that I tried to learn very early on, because I didn't grow up in the best neighborhood, was that just like you should not internalize the goals of your surrounding. So yes, you may not be in the fanciest or richest area. That does not mean that your goals should be based on where you are today, or what your peers right now want. You should have your own goals. And if people want to go a certain way in life, that's on them. But just because that's how they want to live, it doesn't necessarily mean that's how you should live. Nobody is an authoritative figure on how somebody should live. And again, that takes a lot of courage and guts to stick to your own goals and pursue them with all your might. And so, yeah, it's just a reminder that like where you are right now is not necessarily a reflection of what you should be aiming for or how high you should set your standards. Like have your own standards and live by your own standards. Even if people give you permission to slip up, don't give yourself permission to slip up. So have your own goals, work by your own standards, and pursue it very strongly. So yeah, that's what I have to say.
Wow. Thank you so much, Adobe, for that passionate submission. First of all, I would like to apologize to you because that person that sent you that message, I think, joined the wrong call. That's just to begin with. And your story is actually very inspiring to me. While I was listening to you, it was everything that you did mention in terms of all the points you laid out. I myself, I thought probably, you know, I'm 33 now, working as a quant analyst, but I still had, I mean, it was like a wake-up call for me to actually see if, you know, at my stage, if I'm actually following all the right things, right? And for our students, I believe this will be a game changer for them. Please take all the advice that she has given and literally stick it to your wall and read it every single day, right? So thank you so much for that. This video would be available to our listeners on our YouTube channel, so you can always go back to this point any day that you have. When you have a bad day, I think this would be the video for you to watch. So thank you so much, Adobe. I really appreciate you coming up on the call.
No
Right.
worries.
So now I think, I mean, it was worth it in terms of our time management. We have one more speaker, so we'll quickly move to our last speaker. I think, Olise, if you're on the call, would you switch on your video so that, all right, great. Nice, Olise, nice to have you on the call. So I'll quickly introduce our final speaker for today. So his name is Olisa Eze. He's a civil and structural engineering graduate from the University of Sheffield with growing site experience and design skills. In his presentation today, he hopes to inspire you to be competent, in fact, inspire us to be competent professionals and not just ace tests, because as we know, most students just want to learn just what they know, what they need to know to pass an exam. But his philosophy is actually diving deep into things. Please welcome on stage, Olisa.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. I am engineer Olisa Eze from the University of Sheffield, a civil and structural engineering graduate. And I thought this event would be very useful because in our own days when we were in secondary school, we did not have any. We're sort of forced to figure out things on our own. Whereas in my experience while studying in England, the British and the Chinese students, they had a lot of guidance early on that prepared them for their degree. So they had a lot of confidence, and we're trying to address these issues now. And it's never too late to learn. So I've thought to create a presentation to take students through what civil and structural engineering is all about. Can everyone see my screen?
You're not sharing yet.
Okay. Share screen, okay. All right. Is it showing now?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay, so this is a career event, and when you pursue the part of civil engineering, you are involved with construction, literally everything you see around you. I'm guessing everyone right now is inside a building somewhere. It was properly planned and designed and built by experts at some point in time, a long time, no one really knows, because there are millions of buildings in the world. So you can see this beautiful structure. This could be a mall or a plaza somewhere. You can see a steel bridge, and you can see this foundation, because these are all different things you work with as a civil and structural engineering professional. So I'm going to introduce the profession. So the built environment, also considered as the AEC industry, architectural engineering and construction industry. It is concerned with the physical infrastructure you see around you, involving the road networks, tunnels, bridges, waste facilities, high-rise buildings, skyscrapers, residential properties, even stadiums where you watch sporting events, onshore and offshore rig platforms for oil and gas industry, pylons for telecommunication. All of these have to go under the supervision of civil and structural engineering. So it's a very mature profession that it can be scary initially because it involves a lot of things. But in general, to simplify it at this stage, we're just introducing it to students at secondary school. So I can start by saying you can simplify by understanding the design stage and construction stage, which are separate. And usually in the profession, there's a lot of planning that goes into projects. And later on, I'll explain why this is linked to mathematical skills. So as a professional in this industry built environment, you have to bear in mind that you're going to work with a lot of different people: architects, quantity surveyors, land surveyors, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers. So it's very important for you to understand the role you play and how to work as a team member with these other professionals. Secondly, in the real world, which you only get introduced to a little bit in university, the risk involved in this profession, both technical and legal, or you see a lot of it in the real world, but you're meant to be aware of it by the time you get into university. So a lot of the legal risks, fighting with clients based on people breaching contracts and agreements, these things come. Technical risk come from bad design decisions where you have buildings collapsing. So these are reasons why it's very important to have strong mathematical, physics, and engineering skills early on in life. I cannot overstate how important it is that before you start this degree, you have to understand what it entails. If not, you are going to make a lot of mistakes. So as a young professional, you should bear in mind that you're meant to constantly improve your engineering judgment as you practice and as you learn as a student. And secondly, we have to consider health and safety, because at every stage in any engineering project, there's a lot of risk. Well, you see buildings collapsing in Nigeria, even in China and America, because someone made a mistake somewhere. So it's crazy. And these skills as a structural engineer is not just used in civil engineering industry. You're actually needed in transportation industry, oil and gas industries to build their plants and facilities. Some software companies need you, especially if they are working on softwares for civil and structural engineering applications. Some government organizations, public institutes. So these are things you have to bear in mind. On the image on the left, you can easily see a summary of infrastructure, physical infrastructure. So you can visualize what we're talking about. When we get to the structural design process as a civil and structural engineer, because of the amount of things that go into the profession, we have a chart on the left called the RIBA Plan of Works. It was built by the Royal Institute of British Architects to help students and practitioners in the construction industry to coordinate the vast amount of information they work with at each stage of their project. So I've just summarized, there's a complex interaction of elements. You learn all of that when you actually start the course. And depending on the size of the project, so simple to complex, your solutions are very project specific. And something that you have to bear in mind as a young professional is being able to communicate well, whether it's verbally, orally, and also written, because you have to be very clear on what you say and what you do so that other people understand it. Because if you read project management reports, you'd see that a lot of projects around the world have delays because someone made a mistake at some stage and there's always arguments. So these are things you have to bear in mind. And other stakeholders that are involved, like clients that are paying for your projects, you have to discuss with them. So this profession is very mature, and that's why I believe at an early stage in a student's life, they should be taught about all of this. It's not just to encourage someone to do civil engineering, it's to prepare them mentally, okay, what are you going to have to deal with? And this is why this talk exists. So when it comes to mathematics, I have, having gone through the degree and passing well, I believe if I had been told, I would have even been more enthusiastic about the math course. While I was a student, I was also very good at maths. I think I finished as the best student in my secondary school, best in further maths. Although at the time, no one really told me how valuable it is. So if you're pursuing this profession as a civil and structural engineer, you should actually have strong skills in maths, further maths, and physics and physical geography. One of the earlier speakers spoke about chemistry. Not really enjoying it. I laughed, but no one could hear me. But many people find it difficult. But again, sometimes we're not really taught how valuable it is. So these technical skills have a role to play in the design process. In civil structural engineering, we don't deal too much with electronics and the math aspect of the physics aspect of current and circuits. That's with electronic engineers. But we work with classic mechanics. So that has to do with Newtonian physics, forces, motion, the distribution. And why that is important is you have to be able to analyze the members that make up the structure that carries the load, because that's what structural engineering is about. Whether it's a truss or a beam or column or slab, foundation, all of these have to be designed and planned for when you do analysis. And there's another stage called soil mechanics, which is one of the most important part of civil and structural engineering, and it can be challenging. So people have to be introduced into these aspects early, because once you do not understand the theories involved in the soil mechanics aspects, you are literally condemning a building to collapse by differential settlement. I don't want to be too technical. So the site you work on for a civil and structural engineer determines a lot of how the engineers go about planning. So even if you want to do the exact same structure in different locations, sometimes it may be possible, sometimes it may not be, because on a particular site, there are a lot of differences, and all of it affects the force distribution. So these are things you learn further if you actually take on a degree and you attend those classes. And furthermore, you need material science skills to a degree which is built on chemistry, to understand different materials used in construction and how the loads affect their strengthening capabilities. So in developed countries like USA and UK, they use a range of timber, steel, reinforced concrete, and composites, and they make a lot of creative projects, which I'll show you at the end. But to the right side, you can just see summary of some equations. It's not to scare anyone, but it's just to make you aware that, okay, these are the things that go on. And you can see, although it's qualitative, they're analyzed with numerical solutions, because they sort of prove whether a structure, whether it's a beam or column, would last while it's being loaded. Furthermore, civil and structural engineers work with something called design manual. Most of the world use the British standards and something called Eurocodes. Some other countries, Japan, China, Canada, America, they have their own specific design manuals. But this is something every civil and structural engineering graduates or prospective student is meant to be aware of. So this is what a manual looks like. It's much more than this, just a snippet. You can see that there are some equations that pertain to a particular structural engineering situation. In this particular case, is just checking how strong a column is under some conditions. So it's quite extensive, but I feel like it's good to have a look so that you're prepared. And on the right side, you see a table where you see spacing bars, blah, blah, blah. All that does is helps designers choose what size of elements are needed to resist a particular force. Without going too much into details, like I said, it's just about making students, prospective students and parents aware so that their kids, if they follow this career path, they know what they are getting into and why it is rewarding. It's difficult, yes, I agree, but it's also very rewarding in the long run if you are diligent, and is built on strong foundation of math and further maths. So furthermore, when you practice in this industry, like I mentioned previously, you have the design manuals, and you actually have to work with a lot of software. And if you do not understand the philosophies involved, the physics and the engineering concepts, you may end up using the softwares wrongly. I think all the software engineers and computer science people can attest to this concept, GIG, or garbage in, garbage out. So that's why it's important when you are a student, you learn how to use these manuals. There's a lot of them for different aspects of the profession for standard solution. And in some other cases, some people actually create new solutions that have no manuals because they are daring in the profession and they're trying to be innovative, which is why you see all those crazy projects in China, in Singapore, Japan, and even in America. They're pushing the boundaries of the profession. Also, in this modern age, you are actually expected to learn how to program, even though you're a civil and structural engineer. You're not writing software per se, but if you want, you could, but that's a different discussion. But you're expected to know at least one language, whether it's Python or MATLAB or C++, to be able to solve engineering problem, like when you're actually doing the maths, because in structural engineering, there is a lot of, the math is not too complicated, but the amount of information is extensive. And sometimes to automate and repeat certain tasks, you have to write scripts to simplify it. But these scripts have to be made correctly. So that's why exactly you have to understand the philosophy and you combine it with the scripts. And in professional practice, there are things called build information modeling, which improves the workflow on large projects. So something you have to bear in mind again in civil and structural engineering is the size of projects. Projects vary so much in size, and that has a severe implication on the kind of resources, intellectual, financial, and time that goes into it. Below a list of software, these are not all, these are just some, there's still many more out there, different softwares that structural engineers use. You're not expected to learn all, you're just meant to be able to use the ones that are relevant for your career or for your area of specialism. There's a lot of them. And yeah, so it's actually interesting. So for some softwares, this is just a mock-up of the interface of some of these softwares. On the left is one called Protastructure, showing the frame of a building. And on the right is AutoCAD Civil, where you don't do an analysis, but it helps you visualize structures on certain terrains. Well, with Protastructure, you can do a lot of the analysis, which uses some of the design manuals, which uses the philosophy of the design manuals you've been introduced into. So these are a lot of things that go into it. And lastly, one of the things I would say is, rather than thinking that your career starts after you graduated, it's best to think of it as your career starts at your first day of lecture in your first year of university, for instance, so that your mind is really wired into all the details. This profession actually requires you to read a lot. Like, you cannot go through this 4 or 5 years degree, depending on which country you're in. But wherever you are, to actually get things done and get it done well, because for my personal experience while in England, both as a student and as a researcher, I've met a lot of students, so many struggle with and some give up because they were not prepared mentally and in some ways spiritually with the mindset of how to really excel in this course and in the profession. So there are professional associations like Institute of Structural Engineers, UK based. National Council of Structural Engineers Association is American. The Nigerian Institute of Civil Engineers, the Institute of Civil Engineers is both American and British, but all these are open to everyone around the world. When it comes to the engineering community, the world is flat. You are invited based on your interests. So wherever you come from, no one's going to discriminate. As long as you have the skill set and the passion and enthusiasm, you can participate. So you find a lot of textbooks on various aspects. On the right, I've just shown 2, but there's so many others for different aspects. So just these 2 just are good ones that help you start. One is for just understanding things to consider when designing a building, and the other is details of foundation analysis and design. And you should actually read magazines published by these organizations where possible. They're on their websites. If you check blogs like New Civil Engineer, Construction News, British Construction Industry. And actually, these organizations are open to anyone to make submissions, but the quality of your submission has to be of a high professional standard. And that is something that some people miss, because when it comes to engineering is not about writing per se, although writing is important, but a lot of it is technical, and you have to be prepared to put a lot of information together in a time constraints and reduce confusion. So I can say that a lot of students, again, because of how much information goes into this profession, they are not prepared, and some give up, which I believe if they were oriented earlier in life, like some of the English students, when I've met a lot of English students in my course, they are very enthusiastic, and they can tell you that before starting the course, maybe they even worked for an office, or they went to the Institution of Civil Engineers and got Quest scholarship. There's a scholarship in UK where people can get scholarship on their degree if they're going to be civil and structural engineers. and they talk to people there to prep them on how to do it, and then they take ownership of it. So we're trying to sort of introduce this to our fellow Nigerians so that we don't lag behind. When it comes to representation, yes, in the Western world, Africans, even African Americans, are underrepresented in these fields. It's mostly dominated by Europeans and Asians, and we have the brains to do it. And sometimes we are just not given the physical resources, which is a good computer to learn the different softwares and the orientation of what's involved and all the things that go into it. So moving on, part of why the education in this profession is very important is so you avoid scenarios like this. Failures. The left one is Miami bridge collapse. It happened in 2019 in Florida, America. Just show that even in the advanced nations, they still make mistakes, and money is lost, lives are destroyed, and we just want to avoid this in total. So that's why it's good to keep your math skills strong, your physics skills strong, and when you start your degree, the structural analysis work, you have to keep it strong to understand the physics involved in building stability. And on the left is a famous hotel that had this walkway collapse, and there were over 100 and something deaths. This is not to scare anyone, but it's just making you aware that it's very, very important to pay attention to the technical details when you study, and be motivated and to not give up when it feels difficult. I've heard some people say, oh, this is boring, but it is just tough. As with anything, nothing good comes easy. It's not impossible, but once you understand the big picture of how it all comes together, I feel it's very interesting, especially if you've had a strong start in science courses, chemistry, physics, further maths. You're just now applying in a specific context. So when done well, you're able to achieve very beautiful and attractive structures that people can live in safely anywhere in the world. Civil and structural engineers are highly regarded and respected, although sometimes because of the way the world is, people sort of value architects more, or architects are more famous, but the stars behind the scene that make these structures stand up are actually structural and civil engineers. So you can see how valuable it is. And each of these projects are easily worth multiple millions of dollars. So it's a lot of things. It's a lot of responsibility. And sometimes some construction projects are actually in billions of dollars. Like there's a project the largest project in UK right now is the Hinkley Point C. It's a power plant. It's estimated about £22 billion because of how much is going into it. It's crazy. And right now, because it's under construction as we speak, different schools, communities, and so on are using as a direct case study on how structural engineers can collaborate and work together and learn directly. So yeah, so I thought it would be good to make this presentation about more of an intro rather than it being about my journey on everything. I just wanted the focus to be on the industry and the profession, because as I'm I'm still learning. Everyone is still learning. My colleagues that have built some structures are still learning. I've done some projects at different stages, but I'm still learning. But it's good to inspire. So I'm going to end it there. Thank you for attending. So like the host said, if you have questions, you can ask at the end. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Olise, for that, presentation. I personally, my first contact with, structural engineering was when I watched Michael Scofield from Prison Break. That was very exciting for me at the time, and I thought maybe this field is very cool to go into, but that was a little bit too late for me because I was already in university. So probably I would have gone into that if I wasn't already studying something else. So thank you so much for that presentation. We are a little bit, late in terms of our time management. So I'll just quickly go to the rest of this conversation. and then we have 1 or 2 questions to for our speakers, and then we round up the whole conversation. So for those of you who have been with us till this point, I would like to say congratulations to you, because I mean, you've listened to all the speakers, and I'm sure that you've picked 1 or 2 important information from all of them, right? So I'm really so going into the final stages of this, I mean, all the information I've gathered today, and hopefully this information will be marinating in our minds even beyond this conversation. So next up, I would like to quickly introduce you to our another upcoming project, which would be available before the end of this year, hopefully. So if you're interested in this, please do reach out to us, because this is going to be open to all of our students, as well as the world at large. So anyone who is interested can really get this program, and it is the video series that we have. We've been working at the background to try to create this by our very able instructors Sonia and Okize. Please just take a listen to this. I hope you can see my screen. Okay. Could you hear the audio? Was there audio in that? There wasn't audio.
No, the audio wasn't on.
I could actually, I mean, okay. I think I know why that is. Just a quick second. Then I'll play just a second, 30 seconds video. So, okay.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Special Maths Academy Beginner Video Series on Pre-Olympiad Mathematics. My name is Oluwasonya Awe, and I'll be joined by Mr. Okize Chidozie, and both of us are going to be walking you through the fundamentals of Olympiad Mathematics. We are looking forward to joining you on this exciting journey, and we hope that by the end of this course, you will have your fundamentals solidified for future courses.
Could we hear that this time? Okay, cool. Thank you very much. So that's the video series that we have coming up, and we really encourage all the beginners, primary 4, 5, 6, just 1, just 2, just 3, would like to solidify their understanding of to build that bridge, like I said before, between, what you're learning in school and into your Olympiad journey. Please do make sure that, you purchase this. It will be, okay, if you haven't, if the audio was still off, we are going to post this on our YouTube channel, so you'll be able to have access to it, right? So this will be in store by the end of the year, so make sure that you watch out for that. All right, so now I would like to give the stage to Sonia to ask our speakers. So we'll be collecting some questions, and he would walk you through some of them. Sonia, you're muted.
I think it's okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, give me a second. Let me share my screen.
Should I just answer? Hello?
Yes, go ahead, please.
So there's obviously science, technology, engineering, and I think that the M is for mathematics. And I think I have done 3 out of the 4. So there's obviously being a scientist, and that really could involve you either working in a lab and running experiments or trying to find new drugs. So in my case, I'm trying to create a diagnostic test for people with psychosis. And I also got funded to basically build artificial organs. So that's the sort of research that I do. When I was doing technology, I was doing a lot of data work. So that's like another field that you could go into. So either being a data analyst, a data scientist, or doing like AI. And I think if you are interested in technology, now would be a really good time to learn a lot of these large language model tools. So something like GPT-3, I will type it in the box, or Chat GPT, or DALI, or Stable Diffusion, stuff like that. Like learning how to use these tools will put you at an advantage if you're interested in tech, I would say. Engineering, like I said, I did electrical engineering, but I never really worked a job as an electrical engineer. So I can't really say about what opportunities there are. That being said, like I think as there's a really big AI boom, there's like a need for better hardware. And so anything to do with hardware is always really, really good, and is going to be around for quite a while, but I can't really say specifically what opportunities there are there. And then as for mathematics, I think I will defer to the rest of the speakers as they probably have a better idea. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it does.
Okay.
Joshua,
All right. For Mr. Joshua, please go ahead.
Okay. What is the best way a student can dodge environmental influence when he or she expresses interest in STEM? Okay. Well, I'm not sure it's possible to dodge it entirely, but I would advise, like I said earlier, surrounding yourself with like-minded people. And I really love something Adobe said, which was not internalizing the goals of the environment. So the fact that you're around people who are not as motivated or who aren't showing as much interest in what you aspire to do as you are, doesn't mean that you have to internalize that and accept that as your own norm. It doesn't have to be your own standard. So I think this is a very personal thing that you have to battle through. But I will really recommend finding like-minded people and talking to them more. You can go out, do stuff together. It doesn't necessarily have to be that they're just your friends for the purpose of, STEM software engineering. So, or, whatever it is that you have, whatever goals you have, it's just the like-mindedness, I think, that really drives. The Bible does say that iron sharpens iron. So yeah. Yeah, that's my take on this.
Yeah, thank you, Joshua, for that.
I think Mr. Dora is not around, so I'll pass this on to Mr. Doby to answer this one, or even Mr. Joshua, since you have software engineering experience already.
Okay, what does a software engineer do? Because that's what I was planning to be. Okay, what does a software engineer do? Engineer software? So software engineers, I'm going to make it simple. It's a fancy name for someone who writes code. Programmers, you might know that, writing code, building. So when you write a code, that compiles to a program, and the program, or sometimes it's called a software, yeah, so there you get it. You write code, the code becomes a program, and that program is a software. And so software engineers basically build software. Now, of course, writing is some lines of code doesn't make a very complex software. So software engineers pretty much kind of put the one-on-one together and build very complex software systems. They get more and more complex based on what you're building, and that's what they do. They design the systems, they implement them, and by implement them, I mean they first design it. What should it look like, and then they implement it by writing the code. That's what software engineers do.
All right.
I hope that's
yes, that's very helpful. Thank you very much, Joshua.
welcome.
Thank you. And Engineer Olisa, Folayemi was wondering like how long the engineering course takes. So maybe you can break down like the different sections of like an engineering degree.
Okay, thank you. Although I did not study in Nigeria, I've met several people that did, and from what I've heard, in Nigeria, it is about 5 years for the engineering course, assuming there's no strikes and anything to interfere with your university. So I know the first year, typically, you get an all-around engineering training. So I think it's sort of open to mechanical and electric. You do some elective that involve a lot of things before you narrow down into civil and structural engineering, if that is what you want to do. But I would say career-wise, you should think global, act local. So because of the internet we have today, thankfully, your learning is not just limited by your geography. When it comes to engineering, Nigeria still has a long way to go to bridge the gaps in terms of quality of things available. So even though you're physically in Nigeria, I would always recommend still do online research of best practices that's happening around the world. So you can always implement some things within your constraints. So, and also if you have the skill sets to a certain degree, if you want to move to a different country, it's actually possible, but the preparation has to sort of come early. So there's mechanical engineering, which is very broad. There's electrical electronic engineering, which is also broad. There's biomechanical engineering, biomedical, which is also a specialist field that you need a 4 or 5 year course to do. But in UK, they've sort of shrunk the course to about 4 years, where you graduate to 1 degree. So you have a master's, so it's a combination of both your bachelor's and your master's. And in your program, while in UK and America, you can combine it with a year in industry. So maybe after the first 2 or 3 years, you spend 1 year on an industrial placement with different companies, learning on the road. And I think people that take that route often are very attractive in the job market because they see firsthand how a lot of things are applied, and then they actually meet a lot of people, and they actually learn a lot of solutions that you don't learn in the university, because when after the lectures you come out and say, wow, there's actually so many ways to approach an engineering problem, depending on where you are. And I actually worked for Julius Berger as a copper in NYSC copper, and I even learned that wow, even in Nigeria, they're doing a lot of things I was not aware. There's a government project here in Abuja that they spent billions of naira. It's a 13-story building. The foundation was about 6 meters deep. They spent over 1 billion naira just on the foundation because of how much materials and resources and tech expertise, even from abroad, had to come in to ensure this foundation was designed well. So yeah, a good thing to approach this answer is also when you go to being proactive, go to the universities, ask the academic departments in wherever you are, whether you're in America, Canada, Nigeria, you ask them, because they have very specific answers, because policies change. So these are things to bear in mind. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Olisa. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. I think we're going to stop the questions here. So if you have more questions at the end of this conversation, the video will be available on our YouTube channel. So you can keep asking your questions there, and we'll try as much as possible to give you answers, right? So we are well above time. So I think it was a time and 2 hours. It was time well spent. I really enjoyed every bit of it. So thank you so much for all and for the audience for being patient till this point. And also special thanks to the speakers who took out of their busy schedule to attend to our students today to answer their questions and then share some insight into how they can build their careers. We really appreciate that. So with this, would like to come to the end of the program. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Happy Easter to our Christian brothers and sisters, and Ramadan Mubarak to our Muslim brothers and sisters as well. So enjoy your weekend, and hopefully we'll be having another conversation soon.